Welcome back, everybody. I'm Giles, and today I'm going to tell you about my favorite subwoofer ever. Now, this isn't the biggest, and it's not the smallest, it's not the loudest, it's not the newest, but it's one that's near and dear to my heart, and I actually use it today. Now, this is an older model. It's been around forever, but I guess maybe you could say it's an oldie but a goodie because this thing is an absolute beast. And I'm talking about the Velodyne DD18 Plus. The DD stands for digital drive. Now, I know I said that it's a little long in the tooth, and as we talk through the subwoofer, you'll see exactly why I say that, and you'll be like, this thing has a what on it? But let me promise you, this thing is really amazing. Now, I've heard that a new version of this sub is in the works, which will be super cool if that is true. And there's a lot of stuff going on over at Velodyne today. So the brand was picked up by Mansoor Mamangani a couple, 3 years ago, and he has really started to rebuild the brand, new products, redesigning things. They signed a US distribution agreement with Origin Acoustics, so they're available again. They've been at all the shows, so the future looks bright. And you know, that bright future has kind of made me look at this sub that's a favorite of mine, and you know, have a new hope for the future for bigger and better things. Maybe bigger, I don't know. This thing's an 18-inch already, so I don't know if it can get much bigger than that. But let's go ahead and talk through the features of the sub. I'm going to measure it for you so you can see how it measures in my room. And if you watch my stuff before, you know that I've got a standard methodology, and you can look at the measurements of this and compare it back to other stuff and kind of understand how relatively it performs, right? But to get started, let's take a look at the sub itself, and I'll tell you a little bit about it. Okay, let's get into exactly what we're talking about here. So the Digital Drive 18 Plus is an 18-inch sealed subwoofer, right? So 18-inch driver, seal box. There's no bass reflex, no ports, anything like that. Amplification, Class D, obviously. RMS power, 1250 watts, and it says its peak dynamic power is 3000. Frequency response is listed as plus minus 3 decibels, 14.4 up to 120 hertz, with an overall down to 8.8. In room, you know, it plays down as low as you need it to, so that's not any kind of issue whatsoever. Now, from there, you get into all of the specifics of the sub that make it a little bit different. And as you can see now, there is a front panel on this subwoofer that is kind of cool, right? Because you've got the crossover and volume there, which usually is on the back side of the sub that you have to kind of reach around and get to. So that's nice. Now, the grill on this does cover up all of that, but you can tilt the front forward and still get access to that display, which will show the crossover frequency and the volume setting. There's also an input for a microphone there, and the IR pickup for the remote control, because yes, it has a remote control. Now let's talk about the rear of the subwoofer, and this is where a lot of magic is. This thing has a ton of stuff going on. So in the top left, kind of working down, you've got an Ethernet port, and that's to leverage the software to manage the EQ and other aspects of the sub, and we'll get to that. There's an S video port. Okay, you have to remember this sub came out, I think, in 2011, and fundamentally is the same as it was then. So, you know, that was high technology at the time. And again, that's if you want to manage EQ settings from that sub itself, not using a piece of software that you install on a computer. Remember, there weren't really apps for cell phones back then, so your two options were S-video to a screen and then using controls on the sub to manage it, or use a piece of software installed on a computer with Ethernet for the two devices to talk. There's RS-232 in and out, and that's for control. I mean, this is a high-end sub, right? This is completely capable of being integrated and controlled with a control system, albeit, you know, RS-232, but that's still used widely today. A full set of XLR inputs, throughs, and then also a high pass output. And if you look on the right there, there's a selection between 180 hertz to crossover high pass output, right? So that's really nice if you're going to use this in a 2-channel system, right? This is just as adept at home theater as it is at 2-channel, right? It's got everything that you need. Power at the bottom, notice that there's no ground, just a 2-terminal there, and 120 volt, 60 hertz specifically is called out. I don't know what would happen if you plugged it into 220, 240 rather. On the right hand side, you've got composite video output. Again, remember there's S video up there. So composite video output. You've got IR input, 12 volt trigger input, a full set of RCA ins, throughs, LFE input. There's your high pass toggle for your crossover. There's your line level inputs, again, hearkening to the 2-channel world that this might work in. Then you've got line level control and then speaker level control as well, right? So this really can do anything that you want it to in any kind of system, whether it's home theater or 2-channel. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the EQ functionality built into this subwoofer. So remember, this is 2011 era, right? And this thing is all the rage. It's got the capability of using a microphone plugged into the front, which I showed you before, to do sweeps and then automatically tune itself. You know, at the time, this was the way. Obviously, today, we've got a lot of other tools that do that, likely better than it was done so many years ago. So that functionality might not be as important, and I personally don't use that at all, nor do I use the built-in EQ either. Now, like I said, you can install an application on your PC and then manage EQ in lots of different ways, or you can do it directly from the subwoofer plugged into S-Video out to a display. Again, something that I don't use. The remote control I find most useful for just putting into the neutral setting for EQ, as opposed to the other preset EQ styles that are there. Now, you know, every sub is going to need EQ, but like myself, I use a mini DSP 2x4 HD to upstream do EQ. A lot of other people will use like bass control out of Dirac or whatever it might be. So this functionality, while interesting, likely isn't something that you would leverage with this sub. I'm hoping that with the new version, that things will be updated to use an app and be more contemporary, which I'm sure they will be. But again, this functionality exists, it's there, it's kind of fun to play with, but I don't think it's something that you would use really. For me, this sub is my favorite because of just the raw power and how wonderful it sounds. It is just amazing. And speaking of that, let's jump into the measurements so you can kind of see what this thing is doing in my room. And now it's time for the measurements. Yeah, this is one of my favorite parts. I think it's everybody's favorite part. Remember, this is in room in my standard measuring position. This one was a little bit different because I had a sofa kind of dumped over on its side in the middle of the room, and it changed some of the nulls up just a little bit. So the troughs aren't going to be as deep as they typically are, but everything else is the same. So this can be compared directly to all my other measurements out there. Now we're going to get started and talk a little bit about the EQ settings. And what we're looking at now is the defeat setting, right? So this is kind of like, I guess, default. And there are other settings in there. So there's a theater setting that does this to the output. And with no changes except pushing the button on the remote control to turn it to theater, you get this. And there's rock. So you take off that so you can see rock compared to default, and then add theater back on. Then there's jazz. Gosh, let me turn the others off. So jazz and default are the same, I guess. There's a custom, and you know, custom is whatever you measure. I don't have anything in there, so it's going to be the same. And then at last, games. So games is up there. That one kind of looks like theater. Pretty close, a little bit different here in the 50-60 hertz range. So these are the built-in EQ settings on the subwoofer. I don't use them, I just go default, which I'll show you again. If you want a little more output, and that's all it looks like it does, is just jams up another 3 decibels or so of output when you put it in theater mode. You can do that too, but that's what the curve is going to look like. And in general, this thing is, you know, it's pretty solid. It starts rolling off even with room gain about 15 hertz. I think 14.4 is where they said it was -3, and here's 14.4. Yeah, I mean, if it's kind of through here standard, then yeah, I mean, they're right on the mark with their measurements. So let's go ahead and step that through and see what this looks like. So, you know, I took a measurement here at the 24 volume setting on my processor, which doesn't mean anything. It's just kind of a spot to start at. Then we'll step it up to 3 decibels more, nothing crazy there. 3 decibels more, nothing crazy there. 3 decibels more, and now we can start to see where Velodyne limits the subs, and this is typical of them, right? They will start to pin stuff down in that 15 to 20 hertz range, although down here at 10 hertz is still scaling normally. So what I expect to see is things to be pinned here. Then we'll pin it 3 more decibels up. Yeah, it's pinned. And 3 more decibels up. Yeah, it's pinned. 3 more decibels up, and it's pinned. And maybe a little bit of compression, maybe a little bit. And then another, and then yep, we're definitely into some compression, or maybe we hit another level of them limiting output. So, you know, we're almost up here at 110 decibels in room, measured at the listening position, right? Which is 9 feet away, something 10 feet away. So this isn't 2 meters, it's like 3 meters, 3 point something meters. So it's a little bit further than what you see in like your typical CEA measurements, that kind of stuff. So this is a lot of output. I mean, this is freaking loud, really loud. You know, 100 decibels at 10 hertz. Yeah, in your room at your listening position, that's pretty respectable. So, you know, we've got the room modes kicking in here like normal. So, you know, the curve would be pretty flat. You know, you'd be somewhere between this 100 and 105, you know, with a little bit of EQ to make it really, really flat. So all in all, I think that's a great curve. It's not the most output I've ever seen out of a sealed 18 before. I've seen some sealed 15s with this kind of level of output as well. But I will say that this thing sounds really, really good. And I like the way it reproduces the sound. So yeah, that's a nice little curve there. So there you go, my favorite subwoofer. It might be 12 years old and it might be really expensive. I think it retailed like for $5,000 when it came out, and I think I saw somebody selling one for like $10,000 right now. So not really an affordable subwoofer, but it's near and dear to my heart, and I really look forward to the new updated version that hopefully will be coming from Velodyne one of these days, soon-ish. I don't know, they're doing a lot of stuff. If you were at ISE, they had an 1812S there, which is kind of cool and kind of impressive. And we'll see, I don't know. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have, please like, subscribe, ring the bell, and do all those normal things. And I'll see you guys in the next video.